What's going on, everybody? Hashtag Data Spartan back with a new interview today. And I am joined by Brenden Corr. He is the Director of Sales at Fora, but today, for today's purposes, as the co-founder of Project55. So, Brenden, thanks for jumping on, man.
What's up, Lance? Nice to see you, man.
Yeah.
Appreciate a few minutes, dude. This is gonna be a great little session, man. I'm
Yeah.
pumped to dive in.
Yeah, dude, I'm excited, man. So, yeah, very timely. June, Men's Mental Health Awareness Month. I know that that's something that's near and dear to both of our hearts. So, I really want to, take a deep dive on this one because it's very important. So, I know Project 55 is gaining some traction, which is awesome. Can you just talk to us a little bit about the origin story, sort of why you got into that space? And we were talking off camera about how insurance specifically it's really directly related just because of the nuances and what everybody struggles with. So just go for it, man. Just drop some knowledge on us.
I love it. Yeah, yeah. So let's see. So Justin Goodman and I, we both have been in the insurance space. We met on a panel about 2 years ago
Hmm.
at Applied Net, and we were hoping that the conversation was going to be great. And what we found is that the room was packed. And we realized that maybe that there was a much larger conversation that needed to take place.
Yeah.
And about a month after that, Justin kind of came back to the group and he said, "Hey, I've been kicking around this idea."
Hmm.
And I raised my hand and I was like, "Yeah, I am in. This is going to be incredible.
Yep.
Let's do it." And so we spent the first kind of next 6 to 8 months building Project 55, the community, the platform, and the resources. And once we realized that there was actually the need and the traction there, that's when we dove into kind of the mental health training that we just recently launched. And we launched that on June 11th.
Hmm.
And we spent about 10 months collaborating with an industry expert who helped us build and write what we're calling our mental health first responder training program. And as you said, we noticed it in the insurance market simply because that's where we work, right? So we're seeing it every day. We're hearing it, whether it's claims, whether it's underwriting, whether it's sales, CSR, everybody's feeling the pressure.
Yeah.
But even if we rewind it a little bit, it's COVID. It's everybody is feeling the pressure of life, of their businesses.
Yeah.
And so when we saw this from an insurance perspective, we figured there was a better way. And so the training we launched the other week is designed to help people within their everyday lives better kind of equip them with the knowledge, resources, and tools to have conversations with those who are struggling.
Interesting. So, no, I agree with everything that you've said. My personal take on the whole COVID thing, as I really feel like that much isolation created a lot of division between people, and it kind of pit people as like sort of strangers. And so there's not that like togetherness like there used to be. And I feel like a lot of people, might, like men in particular, we just have to fight our own battles, right? Like nobody particularly cares, if guys are going through stuff. So, for you and your travels with all the stuff, all these resources, they are fantastic. What are you seeing a lot of? Like, is it, guys feeling like isolated? Is it lonely? Is it, struggling with, processing, what's going on with them what's sort of spurring those guys to reach out and to leverage a resource like the Project 55?
Yeah, I mean, I think it hits on just like an overarching theme that you kind of just touched on is, men certainly, for whatever reason, we don't talk about it, right? It's supposed to be some masculine form of like, oh, I'm okay. And in reality, men are struggling just as much, if not more, than women, especially when it comes to suicide and suicide rate.
Yeah.
But it's, also, if we can get people to a baseline where we understand that there's a level of kind of safe space within a work environment, it helps everybody from the employee to manager to the leaders,
Yeah.
and then it trickles back down. And I think once those conversations start flowing, we find that there's a lot of commonality between people.
Yeah.
And one of the things we talk about in the course is just also just this idea of active listening and then also empathy. But it's Lance, you might have addiction problems, and I might have PTSD, but it doesn't mean that we can't provide each other safe places, and that I can't empathize with your struggles or you with mine, and provide that environment to where we both feel heard and understood. And then what happens is, we've created a new bond. We feel supported, and then we go home, and we then that trickle down effect to our families and our communities and how we engage. And I know that it's men's mental health awareness, but it's like that same thing takes place within, for women and for, college kids, for high school kids. And, that's why we're so excited about using insurance as a way to get this, because insurance is everywhere, man. And it's in every community. And it's like, how do we use insurance to get this to as many people as possible?
Yeah, I agree, man. And I think as well, there, at least in my opinion, is a correlation between like job performance and mental health. Because if somebody's struggling, having a hard time, going through a bunch of stuff, they feel isolated, they don't know how to leverage these resources, that job performance can sort of decrease over time. And I feel, to your point about the trickle down from leadership right the way through, a lot of leaders will just be like, look, you got to produce or you're fired. And I don't feel like that's the best way. Because I think one of the best videos I saw ages ago was from Simon Sinek, and he was saying there's a very different dynamic when it's like, take a sales rep as an example, be like, you haven't sold anything for the last 3 months, sell or you get fired, versus you haven't sold anything in 3 months, are you okay? And it's that paradigm shift. And I feel like there needs to be a balance between them, because you don't want to go to one or the other. So I feel like the resources that you guys are doing, they could almost be a part of, a company when they're leading their teams, because if you can help people through things, especially if you don't even know something's going on, that I feel like it's a dynamic that we need to consider. Would you sort of agree with that?
Without a doubt. And I think, the example you gave is fantastic. And we talk about that in the training, that look, and there's also, and I don't want to negate that, like at a certain point, if someone's not performing, like there are consequences to that. But that doesn't mean that as leaders, as managers, even employees, that we can't be aware of that of our colleagues, right? You and I are working together, and I notice that you've been coming in late. Usually you're in at 8:30 every morning. Well, now you're at 8:40, your camera's off, right? It's like, what are the signs, and how can we be aware of them to be more proactive in those conversations? Because it's not just sales. And I think sales is a great indicator because it's quantifiable. But what about a claims manager? A claims manager who's struggling, who is normally picking up the phone and answering customers. Well, if she or he is struggling at home, bringing that into work, or maybe she's just overwhelmed at work, so she stops answering the phone as without a smile. She stops answering it, and instead of answering the phone, she's responding in an email, and her tone has changed. There are indicators across the board, much like the example Simon gave. How do we identify those? What can we look for? And then once we've looked at them and said, hey, Brenden's struggling. When do we have the conversation? How do we have the conversation to provide the additional resources and support? So you don't just talk to them at the 3-month mark and say, hey, Lance, you're out. You haven't been performing.
Exactly. And that's the one thing I remember years ago when I was back home, in New Zealand as one of the managers was like, one of the things to look for is somebody, habitually calling out sick on a Monday. Is it like every Monday? And it's
Yeah.
like, is that an indicator of some form of an addiction? Which I feel like blends to what you were saying is, I guess it's like the perception and the optics of the leadership and of the management people to look past these things and look for a lot of those indicators that you were talking about.
Yeah. And I think it also goes the other way too, right? Because oftentimes managers and leaders who are stressed, their tone can change,
Yeah,
their demeanor can change,
yeah,
maybe their home environment changed,
yeah,
because just because you're in a leadership role doesn't mean that you don't have external stressors
exactly.
or that you don't have internal stressors that
Mm.
then get pushed down. And so I think that's the idea of the training, is that it gives everybody, whether you're an employee, you could be a CSR or you could
Yeah,
be an EVP, but
yeah.
the training and the indicators
Mhm.
are the same. And the conversation, it doesn't matter your title.
Yeah, exactly.
Sure, maybe somebody can fire the other person, but the concepts are the same of
Yeah,
how are you? And then choosing to actually listen to that response. Because if
yeah,
you give them an opportunity to respond, the answer might shock you, and it might be exactly what describes maybe a shift in that management style or a shift in how they're showing up every day to work.
yeah. No, I agree. And, addiction as an example, addiction doesn't discriminate. It's not like CEO of the company, or, you can't get addicted versus the frontliners. That's not how it works.
I
Um,
mean, I never thought I would have ended up in rehab.
yeah,
Like that, that was ne- that just never crossed my mind. I didn't
yeah,
have anybody in my. Now, certainly, I've had family members who probably needed to stop, or there's been alcoholism in my family, but like I never thought that that would result in me getting addicted to alcohol and Xanax and needing to go to California for 90 days
yeah.
and almost losing everything I had, and having to make difficult decisions.
Mhm.
It doesn't. And that's also the same when it comes to, you might hire some people, but they might have a child who has who's on the spectrum or has autism or is bipolar, who maybe needs a little extra time 2 days a week.
Yeah,
Does that mean that they're a bad employee?
yeah,
Well, no. But like, how do we set the guidelines? How do we set the framework
yeah,
to ensure that they feel comfortable talking about those things and asking
yeah,
in a supportive environment? And I think it's getting better, but I mean, by getting better, it's like we still have 90% of the way to go. It's like
yeah,
we've moved from 8% to 10%. So, which is encouraging. Even the fact that we're having this conversation and that
yeah.
people are aware of Project 55 and they're supporting it, it's moving the needle, man, or
Yeah.
beginning to at least.
No, I agree, man. And this whole conversation is very enlightening, and I feel like it's a very difficult conversation for a lot of people to have. So,
Mm.
for us to just kind of wrap up a little bit here and give something that people can actually action on and do. If you are somebody who's watching this, you are going through, a dark time right now, you are struggling with various things. How does one access Project 55? How does one get involved in these courses? And I guess what's that first step to get onto that path for help?
Yeah, yeah. I also just I want to be clear, our goal with this is we're driving awareness and change
Hmm.
for the conversation and the stigma.
Yeah,
We aren't teaching people how to be therapists, and we are not licensed mental health experts.
right.
But all that to say, the beautiful part of what we've created is you can go to project55.org. You sign up not only for the training, but then you get access to our community. And within the community and training is our entire catalog of resources. And that includes, information, research papers, podcasts, books that you can go learn, listen to. The community aspect is you can go pose a question, get answers from others who have maybe experienced something similar.
Yeah.
And then the training side of things is designed to help everybody understand the varying degrees of what mental health struggles people end up with and how to not overcome them, but how can I help Lance, or how can I help Brenden?
Yeah.
How can I be aware? And then what are the resources I can provide? But most importantly, how can I ask the right questions?
Yeah.
Before somebody gets to that point of that darkness, right?
Yeah.
How can I be aware that Lance is struggling during months 1 and 2 before we get to month 3 and he's fired, right? Or, kind of in theory, right? The goal is I want to be asking the questions because I noticed in month 1 that Lance was starting to show up a little bit late.
Yeah.
He was missing his KPIs. He was making less phone calls.
Yeah.
Month 2, hey, Lance, I've noticed these things. It's giving that person the tools to be the kind of first responder when it comes to mental health, to ask the right questions so we can bridge the gap until they're able to actually get the help they need.
Yeah. No, that's awesome, man. And I love that approach. It's helping people with that first step and then showing them the path. So Brenden, man, appreciate you. Thank you for jumping on. Everybody watching, if you are having struggles out there, I know it can get real bad real quick. So reach out.
Yep.
Into these resources.
Yeah. And also, reach out. I mean, again, you can find me on LinkedIn. Please reach out. We do have all of the various hotlines, resources for people to call if they need that stuff, if and when they get to that point.
Yeah.
But also hopefully through the training and stuff, we can bridge that gap. But of course, happy to talk to and chat with anybody who feels like they need that, because that's also the point too, to show up.
That's awesome. Awesome. Well, yeah, love it. Everybody watching, hope you guys got some good value out of that and have some actionable things you guys can take. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.